Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're taking a massive shortcut into a lifetime of neurological wisdom. We're synthesizing the work of a really renowned neurosurgeon, Dr. Russell Blaylock. He has over 40 years of direct experience studying the human brain. And our mission really is to extract his essential actionable blueprint for fueling your brain. We're not talking just for survival, but for, lifelong longevity and peak function.
Right. And we're going to be drilling down into his research on things like neuroinflammation, chronic disease, and this is the important part, the specific nutrients that act as defense shields for your brain. And we have to start with a finding that it completely redefines how we think about aging. That old idea, the dogma that once you're an adult, your brain is done changing. It's all downhill from there.
Yeah, that's what we were all taught.
It's scientifically bankrupt. It's just not true.
Absolutely. The sources we looked at confirm, based on decades of his observation, that the brain maintains this radical plasticity throughout your entire life. And we're talking about continuous, active change. We're talking new synapses, new dendritic connections, even new neural pathways in people living past 100.
And this continuous increase in complexity. This is the scientific basis for what we call the wisdom of the age. It's not just about the elderly holding on to old memories. That's not it at all. They are constantly wiring new systems, integrating their past experiences with what's happening right now. And that creates a denser, more robust processing unit. So you should think of it less like hanging onto old files and more like building a superior, custom-designed operating system every single day.
That's an incredibly powerful way to think about it, that aging actually means more complexity, not less. But I imagine that kind of higher level functioning has some pretty serious demands. The brain is an energy hog, right?
Oh, it is the ultimate diva.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. It relies so heavily on glucose, it demands at least 80% of its fuel from metabolizing complex carbs. But the real functionality, everything from recalling a name to articulating a thought, to your mood, that all relies on specialized, complex molecules from your diet.
So we're moving beyond just energy and calories. This is really about the quality of the building materials themselves. I found it really striking in the sources how directly diet is linked, not just to, memory problems, but to some pretty profound behavioral issues.
Precisely. When the brain isn't getting those proper nutritional building blocks, the consequences just cascade. You see difficulty with concentration, insomnia, memory loss, and yes, even really concerning aspects of behavior like increased violence, chronic depression, and all sorts of obsessive-compulsive behaviors. Your diet is quite literally dictating the quality of your internal world. Now, when we look at the biggest threats to this whole system, Dr. Blaylock repeatedly flags one primary silent destroyer,
Which is?
excitotoxicity and the neuroinflammation that it causes.
Excitotoxicity. That's a heavy-sounding word. Can you break that down for us, what's actually happening in the brain?
Yeah, let's do that. Imagine your brain cells, your neurons, are like high-performance engines.
Okay.
Excitotoxicity is what happens when common food additive-specific chemicals act as these really aggressive stimulants. They latch onto receptors, especially glutamate receptors, and they just force the neurons to fire over and over and over again.
So they're just redlining constantly.
Exactly. They're constantly redlining. And this sustained overstimulation, it exhausts the cell, floods it with calcium, and eventually the neuron just burns out and dies. And that death process creates this profound chronic inflammation in all the tissue around it.
So you're saying common food items are literally causing brain cells to commit suicide by exhaustion? That's shocking. What are the big culprits we need to be militant about avoiding?
Well, the list starts with the well-known ones, the ones you might have heard of. Monosodium glutamate MSG and artificial sweeteners like aspartame. These are the classic examples. They directly trigger this overstimulation and make the cells vulnerable to free radical damage.
And here's where the data, for me, went from just concerning to genuinely alarming. It's the duration of the damage. The sources suggest that even a short-term exposure can trigger inflammation that lasts for, it says, very long periods of time, even decades. How is that even possible?
It's possible because of chronic low-grade inflammation and mitochondrial damage. So when a neuron dies, the The support cells around it, they're called microglia, they get activated and inflamed.
Mm-hmm.
And these inflamed cells, they just keep generating reactive oxygen species, free radicals, for an extremely long time. The initial insult might be brief, but the fire just smolders for years.
Wow.
And it leaves that whole area vulnerable. It creates a terrain where conditions like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's can take root much, much more easily.
And the insidious part is that we're unknowingly consuming these things on a massive scale because they're so disguised in processed foods.
Yeah.
The sources list a whole new generation of these stealth excitotoxins.
Indeed. You have to look for anything labeled hydrolyzed vegetable protein, soy extract, soy isolate proteins, or carrageenan. You see that a lot in thickeners and milk alternatives.
Right.
These are all just concentrated sources of free glutamates. And they hit the brain like an excitotoxic punch. I mean, given the amount of processed food we eat, we are literally feeding our population tons of this every year.
It really feels like we're fighting a losing battle against the food supply. What's the defense strategy here? We can't just stop exposure cold overnight.
No, but we are absolutely not helpless. The strategy is two parts. You minimize your exposure, and you maximize the brain's resilience. And the good news is we can actively mitigate this damage by supplying the brain with very specific nutrients. These compounds are known to stabilize the neuron, to calm down those overactive receptors, and crucially, to boost mitochondrial energy production.
The cell's power plants.
Exactly. Which is essential for repairing and maintaining healthy brain function.
That makes perfect sense. If you protect the power source, the cell can defend itself better. Okay, so let's shift from the threat to the defense. Dr. Blaylock consistently points to a handful of key micronutrients. They're all found naturally in whole, traditional foods. We've distilled it down to the 5 most essential players. We have to start with the foundation of the brain itself, the fats. Number 1 is omega-3, specifically DHA. Tell us why this is the king of brain fats.
Okay, so the brain is roughly 60% fat by dry weight. Of that critical fat, DHA makes up a staggering 50% of all the polyunsaturated fats.
50%.
Yeah. And it's not just structural. It's the primary building material for your cell membranes, and it's the critical component that lets you form those new pathways and synapses we were talking about, that lifelong plasticity. So if you're deficient in DHA, you simply cannot build a fully functional, resilient brain. It's that simple.
And that dual function being a structural component and an anti-inflammatory, that's key, right?
It's paramount. Most degenerative brain diseases are now seen as fundamentally inflammatory disorders. DHA acts like a powerful systemic fire extinguisher. It reduces that chronic neuroinflammation from excitotoxicity and other things. And then on a functional level, it increases serotonin, which improves your mood, sleep, prevents depression. And critically, it increases acetylcholine, a major memory neurotransmitter that is just. It's notoriously depleted in Alzheimer's disease.
I want to pause on the data for a second because it just speaks volumes. The sources cite a study where Alzheimer's patients were 2.5 times more likely to have low blood levels of DHA.
Right.
And for people before they got the disease, elderly folks with the lowest DHA levels were 67% more likely to develop Alzheimer's within the next decade. That suggests this deficiency isn't just a side effect, it might be a catastrophic prerequisite.
It absolutely points to deficiency as a major, major risk factor. The brain cannot function without it. The sources suggest a target of about 400 to 600 milligrams of DHA a day.
And where do we get it?
Well, supplements exist, but the most bioavailable forms come from your diet. Fatty fish, so think sardines, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, and highly recommended fish roe. You also get smaller amounts from pasture-raised eggs and grass-fed animal foods.
Okay, so if omega-3s are the structure and the anti-inflammatory guard, we need something to keep the whole nervous system running smoothly. That brings us to number 2, the mineral that is so often overlooked, magnesium.
Yeah, magnesium deficiency is a huge issue in the modern diet. Food processing just strips away massive amounts of it, and our ability to retain it often goes down as we get older. And when magnesium levels drop, everything that relies on nerve or muscle activity, the heart, blood vessels, and the brain becomes dangerously vulnerable.
We hear about magnesium for heart health, but what's the specific connection to brain protection, especially with that excitotoxicity we were just talking about?
This is a critical link. Magnesium is a powerful regulator of that exact same glutamate system. It helps keep the receptors calm, it stabilizes the neuron. So if your brain magnesium is low, any injury, whether it's a physical trauma, a stroke, or that chronic excitotoxic assault, is greatly magnified. Low magnesium is basically setting your brain up for maximum damage when an insult happens.
So it's like a gatekeeper and a calming agent. Where should we look for it?
Well, magnesium is incredibly abundant in the foods that have been kind of tragically stripped from our diet.
Mm-hmm.
Think leafy green vegetables like spinach and Swiss chard. Nuts and seeds, pumpkin seeds, almonds are powerhouses, avocados, legumes. The takeaway is just eat unrefined whole foods. That's where magnesium lives. Okay, moving to our third nutrient, vitamin C. I really want to emphasize that Dr. Blaylock calls it more than an antioxidant, and we should too.
Why that distinction? I think most of us associate vitamin C with, immune function, fighting off a cold.
Its role in the brain is so much more profound and structural. Vitamin C is vital because it's a cofactor in making two primary neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, which we said is essential for memory, and dopamine.
Right, dopamine for mood, motivation.
Exactly. And for preventing movement disorders like Parkinson's. By helping control the brain's glutamate system, it also helps prevent that excitotoxic cascade from spinning out of control.
So it's not just mopping up free radicals, it's actively building the communication chemicals the brain needs, and it helps other nutrients too, right?
That's the synergy of whole foods. It's a powerful regenerator of vitamin E. They work as a team. This is why the sources consistently say get your vitamin C from whole foods, where it's naturally paired with bioflavonoids and other compounds that make it work better.
Which brings us back to simple sources. Berries, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, citrus fruits, kiwi, and even everyday vegetables like bell peppers, broccoli, and leafy greens.
Okay, our fourth line of defense is vitamin E, specifically the tocopherols. This one has a very specific job related to the brain's fatty structure.
What's that job? What makes it unique?
Vitamin E is fat soluble, so it hangs out in the fatty parts of the cell. Remember, the brain is 60% fat. Vitamin E is the essential bodyguard for those delicate, fat-based cell membranes. It protects all those fatty components, and specifically, it safeguards cholesterol from oxidation. And oxidized cholesterol is a huge driver of cell dysfunction.
So it's keeping the cell membranes intact so they can communicate properly.
Exactly. And the sources gave a fascinating detail about the different forms of vitamin E and cancer prevention.
Oh, yeah.
They did. It's apparently well documented that only the natural forms found in plants and a synthesized form called vitamin E succinate, those are the only ones effective in preventing cancer growth.
Which again points back to whole food sources.
Nuts and seeds, almonds, sunflower seeds, hazelnuts along with avocados, olive oil, and leafy greens.
Finally, rounding out our essential five, we have what you call the energy and versatility team. Coenzyme Q10 and alpha-lipoic acid, or ALA.
Right, we group these because they are key players in energy generation and damage control. CoQ10 is a foundational energy generator inside the mitochondria, the powerhouses. All your cells need it, and the brain, with its huge energy demands, really relies on it to function and protect itself.
And ALA, alpha-lipoic acid, that one seems to be everywhere, doing everything.
ALA is maybe the most powerful and versatile antioxidant in the whole biological system because of its reach. Unlike a lot of antioxidants, it's both fat-soluble and water-soluble.
So it can go anywhere.
It can go anywhere. It can do protective duty in the plasma, in the fluid outside the cells, and deep inside the cells themselves. It is everywhere, doing critically important protective work.
Okay, we've established a clear strategy for what the brain needs to thrive, but we need to spend a little time on what has to be actively removed from the diet, especially given the biological reality of aging.
The urgency is absolutely real. Our bodies just get progressively more inflamed as we live. The sources say that by age 75, the number of free radicals generated in the brain is 10 times higher than when we're younger. And inside the mitochondria, it's a 15-fold increase.
We have to stop pouring fuel on that fire.
Yes.
So, zooming out, what is the single biggest dietary accelerator of brain inflammation we need to tackle right now?
It is the astronomical, unnatural rise in the consumption of omega-6 fats.
Mm.
We need them in small amounts, but our modern consumption ratio is wildly out of balance. A high intake of these specific oils has been shown to increase systemic and brain inflammation, directly contributing to the risk of diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
And if we're trying to flood the brain with protective omega-3 DHA, we have to minimize the omega-6 fats that are actively crowding out and counteracting those benefits. So what are the specific oils to avoid?
It's the common industrial oils that are in all our processed foods. Corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil, soybean oil, and canola oil. They're cheap, they're everywhere, and they're highly inflammatory in these quantities.
That makes the avoidance strategy sound almost impossible because those oils are in everything.
The conclusion for avoidance actually simplifies things a lot. It's just don't eat processed foods. That's the single best defense.
Right.
Because that's where you find the inflammatory oils, the high fructose corn syrup, and the disguised excitotoxins. It's all in one package. Beyond that, prioritize eating fresh fruits and vegetables. Aim for organic, but critically, and this is important, even if they are organic, wash them thoroughly. Atmospheric drift from other farms can cause contamination.
Right.
And finally, minimize excessive red meat consumption, not eliminate it, but reduce the excess, and strictly limit all high sugar foods, which are also profoundly toxic to the liver and trigger inflammation that hits the brain.
We have successfully navigated this deep dive into Dr. Blaylock's work. We've established that the brain is not a static organ, that this radical plasticity, this capacity to build greater complexity, it persists throughout life, even into our centenarian years. But this incredible function is conditional. It demands the right fuel from whole traditional foods and fierce protection from those silent destroyers.
Yeah, the excitotoxins that redline our neurons and the inflammatory omega-6 oils that just hijack our internal chemistry. And I think the really powerful takeaway here is the sheer simplicity of the solution versus the incredible complexity of the problem that the modern food industry has created.
Right.
The brain doesn't need exotic nutrients. It needs fundamental nutrients like magnesium, DHA, and vitamin C
Yeah.
that have been systematically stripped from our diet, while at the same time we're introducing all these novel toxins. We have the power to reverse that process by just returning to whole, varied, unprocessed food sources.
So, as you integrate this knowledge, we want to leave you with a provocative question to consider. Given how absolutely critical DHA is for maintaining those new neural pathways and building brain complexity, how are you ensuring the very fats your brain relies on are not being actively crowded out and negated by the overwhelming volume of inflammatory omega-6 oils that are just ubiquitous in the modern food supply? We'll leave you with that crucial thought to explore. We hope this knowledge serves you well.